Okay, hello everyone. Welcome to the final episode for 2022 of This Week is Live. So glad to see you all. I'm your host, Raymond Flotat, editor in chief of mxdwn.com. That's Mixdown. So, this has been kind of a great little experiment and something we've been trying different. We've spent the better part of 20 years focusing entirely on written content, and the show is hopefully the beginning of many different things that'll exist a little bit more in a video realm as opposed to a text based realm. We've always been dyed in the wool in the world of journalism and writing and the process and the routine of writing and editing. But also, of course, as the world evolves, more and more people are interested in video and audio content. And this is something we've always wanted to do. For those of you that have seen these episodes or are watching them on YouTube or watch them in clips that we put up in various other social media channels, thank you so much for joining us. For anybody who has bothered to come and watch this live as we tape this and we put this together live on the fly, thank you so much for joining us. It's been a wonderful little experiment in terms of basically a different discipline for me personally, in terms of largely improvisation on some level, running cameras and gear and mixing and live streaming and broadcasting, but also to that extent, just holding court, talking, explaining myself, explaining information, news, telling stories. So this has been a lovely little thing that we hope to do a lot more of as time goes on and as the weeks roll out. But we'll be, like most of this country, intentionally taking a break for the next couple of weeks after this. And then we'll be coming back probably the first or second week of January. And then we should be back on the air every Thursday, just like this. Also, though, as I've hinted about in some of the earlier broadcasts of this show, we might also start dealing in some other kinds of content, other kinds of shows. We might also start having special guests on this show. We might start having people that we interview, but we're not getting too far ahead of ourselves yet. A lot of what you've seen here is entirely just us finding our sea legs, as one friend of ours put it, in terms of just how does this feel? What does this look like? What even is it? So thanks again for joining us for all of this. If you haven't tuned in before, we have a regular recap of the headlines going on in the world of entertainment, usually about 5 or so, maybe more, depending on what kind of things are going on in the week. And then we'll ultimately have a short story and a monologue. Now, for this particular episode, we have stories on the Game Awards, Pantera, Rage Against the Machine's bassist Tim Commerford, the Golden Globes, and Henry Cavill. But it would be remiss if we didn't mention at this moment that Mixdown as a property, as an entertainment magazine, is kind of lost entirely in the maelstrom of work, which is the annual end-of-year content world. Now, anybody who has anything to do with, music or entertainment magazines, everything at the end of the year, because not a lot of things come out at the end of the year, a little bit different in movies because some movies come out on Christmas Day. But at the end of the year, everything is about what is the best of for the year. If you're a music magazine, it's album of the year and song of the year. If you're a movie magazine, it's movie of the year, performance of the year, or directing or writing of the year. If it's television, it's television show of the year. Of course, video games, it's game of the year. Now, last week where we were in this broadcast was that one of the big milestones of the game industry, the Game Awards, were just happening, and they, honored many different categories of possible things in the world of games. Then one of the stories we're covering here today is obviously the Golden Globe nominees, and that's going to be honoring both movies and TV. But me, all the department heads from Mixdown, all the writers and editors, the myriad people who make all of this a reality every day, and the immense amount of work it takes all of us to do this, are all just basically going crazy getting ready for all of that end of year content to essentially focus on and highlight for you what we think, based on our expertise, was the best media that came out in all the different disciplines that we have. So for those of you that are watching this or will see this on Monday at 10 a.m., our Album of the Year and Song of the Year lists will be out. We know who it is, but I can't tell you. No leaks, no spoilers. And then the day after that, we'll have our Game of the Year list. Then the day after that, on Wednesday of next week, we will have our TV Show of the Year list. But then, because of certainly a lot of movies don't come out until right around now, for example, Avatar: The Way of Water is just coming out literally tonight and tomorrow. And some movies don't come out till Christmas Day. So movie of the year and the associated features that go with that won't be going live until approximately January 1st and beyond, since that'll have a chance for all the movies team to have seen some of the big end of year releases. Whereas, different from the world of music and, games, which really not that much comes out in early December. By now, most of the music and games industries are pretty much checked out and are effectively not really thinking about putting out new product or new titles. So without further ado, bear with us as we're all a little tired and a little cracked out getting ready for that. And then there'll be a big 21 gun salute for 2022 and all of the madness that has been this year coming next week. Watch our site, mxdwn.com, for all of that madness and all of that fun. But in the meantime, let's get into some headlines and what are the last headlines I have for you in 2022. First and foremost, as we mentioned, right where I left you last week, the Game Awards took place here in Los Angeles and basically more or less went the way you would expect it to. It was a great show. Lots of cool stuff shown of games that aren't out yet, stuff that's being teased for shows and games in the future. But then also the awards were given out for the categories that were there, and that's where there really wasn't much in the way of surprises. God of War Ragnarok and Elden Ring basically dominated the categories where they were nominated for. God of War Ragnarok basically took Best Narrative, Best Performance, Christopher Judge for Best, performance, which is, I guess, instead of Best Male Performance and Best Female Performance, it's now just Best Performance. I guess they're being gender neutral on the whole performance issue, but unfortunately with that means half as many people even get nominated. That is great and forward thinking in its own way, but now instead of 10 different people, there was only 5, but from whatever reason. Ultimately, and then also Best Song and Best Audio, while Elden Ring won for Best Direction and then Game of the Year. Curiously, in this year's broadcast, some kind of would-be troublemaker, some younger person managed to get all the way on stage as Elden Ring and its creative team were accepting the Game of the Year award through a translator. And then right as the show was about to go off the air, the person grabbed the mic and started giving an incomprehensible speech about his rabbi, Bill Clinton. Various reporters have started to look into who this person was. We're not going to surface his name to try to give him more press for being a troublemaker, but essentially, apparently someone who at one point several years ago when he was younger was a guest on Alex Jones' InfoWars show. So whatever purpose this person had, whether they were just trying to be a nuisance or whether they were just trying to raise hell or just to be like, ha ha ha, look, I did this. Bizarre that a person could even get that far on the stage and no one even noticed. And I'm sure Jeff Keighley and the Game Awards are not thrilled about that or whatever security breakdowns led to that. I would imagine subsequent years are going to see things be quite different after that happened and effectively efforts to try to make sure no one ever pulls some nonsense like that again. But on the other side of things, as the game, awards went through and all the various awards were given out, and some of them unfortunately kind of abbreviated and people didn't get to give acceptance speeches, many different pieces of content or trailers from really exciting games were shown, which is also one of the things that makes this show so special and one of the things that makes it so great, just like how E3 has always been a place where people come to see what is the thing that's just being announced for the first time. What is the thing that has never happened before? And amidst the different things that were shown, there was a new DLC, a new expansion of Cyberpunk 2077, which featured not only Keanu Reeves returning as Johnny Silverhand, but now also the actor Idris Elba in full motion capture and looking amazing in his performance. Footage from Final Fantasy 16, Street Fighter 6, a new chapter in the modern Star Wars adventure series, Star Wars Jedi Survivor, Armored Core 6, a sequel to the very popular game Hades called Hades 2, and then last but not least, Hideo Kojima's next chapter in his bizarro science fiction something world and realm of content and quality of Metal Gear Solid, but definitely not a stealth covert action game, Death Stranding 2, which again features the incredible actors Lea Seydoux and then also Norman Reedus, who some of you may know if you're a television fan from his part as Daryl on The Walking Dead. And this appears to pick up from the events of the first game, but has tons of crazy surrealism and dreams and nightmares and all the different stuff that this game is famous for. Elsewhere in the world of music, Pantera is engaging on their first, celebration is what they're calling it, but it's a reunion tour for all points and purposes down in South America at a variety of festivals and shows. And unfortunately, just 2 shows in to the tour, Rex Brown, the original bassist, had to leave the tour and return home and won't be returning for the remainder of the tour dates in South America. Now, he's not leaving the band as a part of this reunion. And at first it was just stated to be health reasons. But then, of course, not surprisingly, very quickly after that, it was revealed that the reason that he had left was he had contracted COVID. And, he had issued a statement saying it was a mild strain of COVID, that it wasn't a super severe strain of COVID. But then to that end, the band has apparently their own safety and security protocols, and he didn't want to have a chance that anybody else in the band could catch it. So he headed home and won't be returning for the rest of the South American tour dates. And filling in for him was Derek Engelman, who is also from Philip Anselmo's band The Illegals and Scour, and then for one song, Bobby Landgraf. Also in the world of music, and even sadder news, Rage Against the Machine bassist Tim Commerford, who has had his own side projects in Walk Rat and had just recently announced a new project called 7D with Matthias Walkrat and Johnny Polanski, has sadly and tragically revealed that he has been for some time fighting prostate cancer. In fact, even having had, when he recently went out with Rage Against the Machine on their long awaited and long delayed because of the pandemic reunion tour, Rage Against the Machine, right as he went out on the road with him, he had just been recovering from having his prostate removed. It is sad, sad, and tragic in the extreme. And as so many Americans unfortunately know right now, that cancer is basically the scourge of the modern phase of existence. And tragically, not completely stamped out or cured in any way. There are treatments that are available, but it's very difficult and very hard to eliminate. And some people live with it the rest of their lives. Sometimes it goes away for a while, sometimes it comes back. And if you're not super, super familiar with these kinds of things, I highly encourage you. We'll put the link in the comments when we post this on YouTube later to read Tim Comerford's statement on what he's been going through, the pain that he went through after having his prostate removed. And I mean, you know, if you know anything about Tim Comerford, he's always kind of been a super active person, not someone who's just laying around, super in shape, super doing things. And he described this entire experience and the pain that came from it, especially the surgery, as bringing him to his knees. So if you're interested, if you're curious about this kind of thing and what it can do to a person and their family, you should read his account of it. It is incredibly sad. And of course, everyone out there and Rage Against the Machines fans, everyone here at Mixdown hopes that Tim Comerford undergoes a very, very speedy recovery. Elsewhere in the world of movies and TV, we mentioned that the Golden Globes had their announcement of their nominees for this year. Now, the Golden Globes is kind of I don't know how to explain it other than to say that it is not exactly what's considered the biggest and the most important of the award shows, but still important enough that a lot of big Hollywood celebrities show up. The Golden Globes may not be the Oscars, but at the same time, what's really special about the Golden Globes is they basically celebrate both movies and TV, all in the same show, all in the same broadcast. It isn't treated as if TV isn't on the same level as movies. However, the thing that's interesting about the Golden Globes is that it's always been kind of handled nebulously by a group called the Hollywood Foreign Press Association. It's not exactly the Academy as the Oscars are, or, NARAS, NARAS for, the Grammys in terms of music. So it has always been a group of foreign journalists and an organization and kind of a private group that's kind of run this and ultimately, their own voting process for who wins these various categories. Now, last year, the show didn't even happen. And this has to do with the rising tide of inclusivity and diversity in content. There was a lot of complaints about the Hollywood Foreign Press Association and a lot of things that weren't clear about what their hiring practices were, what percentage of their staff and their membership was anybody that wasn't white, anybody of color. And effectively, whatever the case may be, whatever the truth of that may have been, NBC, which was their main broadcasting partner, basically had no interest in being a part of it unless they did something to rectify that, because the complaints were growing louder and louder and louder. And the show last year was basically done, and awards were handed out without an audience or being broadcast. And it's still not even, to me, having followed this so closely all this time, even terribly clear whether it, any of the people they gave awards to last year were even there. If it was just them saying, hey, so-and-so won, congratulations. Okay, now the next award. So this year, now, them apparently having made massive changes to their hiring process, to their leadership, NBC feels satisfied enough to give them a 1-year chance to be back on the air with the program and to basically have another stab at it. So this year's program will be on January 10th. So just after the new year, just after everybody's recovering from New Year's Eve and Christmas and holiday vacation, this is going to happen. And then most critically, for the major categories, effectively, there has always been an interesting thing about the way the Golden Globes tackle things, which is they divide drama from musical and comedy. Whereas in a lot of major award shows, those things just get swallowed up by drama. Drama tends to be the thing that is the biggest in attention, and that is how they do it for both film and television. So in the world of television, for drama, the shows that are nominated for Best Drama are Better Call Saul, The Crown, House of the Dragon, Ozark, and Severance. Like to point out, and I think a lot of you are probably saying it to yourself right now, curious by its absence, Stranger Things, kind of amazing that that's not there, given everything that how much everybody loved everything that was happening in that show this year. But okay. And then on the other side, in best television series, musical or comedy, there is Abbott Elementary, The Bear, Hacks, Only Murders in the Building, and of course Wednesday from Netflix, which is the new breakout hit that Netflix has. This show's going to happen on January 10th, and we'll be watching and we'll be covering it from both the movie and TV sides of Mixdown. And then lastly, in another bizarre twist of fate in the world of movies, Henry Cavill, who recently announced he was leaving The Witcher 3 and had just been a part of a secret scene in Black Adam and was going to be returning to the role of Superman, effectively Henry Cavill is no longer playing Superman. Now, we've talked a lot about this show and in our reporting how that the leadership at the DCEU and Warner Brothers, as far as their film studio is concerned, effectively, had been completely shaken up, and James Gunn and Peter Safran had been put in charge to basically drive a new course to build a new cinematic universe around this incredible stable of DC Comics characters. And it seemed like, and a lot of people had come to the conclusion that Henry Cavill leaving The Witcher and saying, I'm officially returning to Superman was a part of James Gunn and Peter Safran's plan, but it wasn't. And apparently that deal was struck long before they were appointed and they were officially in that position. And that was told to Henry Cavill to announce. Now, whether he left The Witcher because he thought he was returning to play Superman, no one really sure yet, but that seems like the logical thing that might have happened. And then effectively, he basically had a meeting with James Gunn and Peter Safran, and they basically indicated to him that what were their plans for Superman wouldn't involve him, that they're thinking about making a Superman movie, but that it would probably involve a younger version of the character. And they hinted that there might be things that they can do with him in the future and for in terms of their long-term planning, but they didn't clarify, and anybody saying otherwise is purely speculating. They didn't say why, what basically they were thinking of him for the future, whether it was another version of Superman or it was a different story or a different character. And effectively, for now, Henry Cavill is no longer playing Superman. James Gunn has hinted in a lot of detail that they know exactly what their long-term plan is for the slate of films and characters and properties that they're going to do, but that they won't be revealing really anything until the early part of next year. So a lot of people are wondering and guessing, and just given his offbeat sense of things and the incredible stamp he put on Guardians of the Galaxy, is he going to be using unusual, not heralded characters? Is he going to be focusing on Batman and Superman and the very big famous ones, the Flash, and the other things that have always been a part of what people regard as DC Comics characters? But we'll have to wait and see. Now, for our last monologue for the last show of this year, effectively, I just wanted to take a moment to kind of speak to, I think, just on a little bit of a level, what we've always been trying to do with Mixdown. And, I wanted to say one thing, that has always been a part of our emphasis. We've had a lot of writers and a lot of editors over the year, a lot of people who come in who are with us for a while, maybe with us for a few years, maybe with us for a few months. And then we end up having lots of discussions about what is good leadership and also what is great content. And that's always been a big part of our concentration and our focus in terms of what we do. Now, I came to wanting to have a music magazine, and then by an extension of that, eventually later an entertainment magazine, to effectively have, a place to talk about what was exciting and what was good. And then really quickly it became clear to me that most aspects of what things were as far as genre was concerned were treated with some measure of disdain by whatever the controlling arm of media was at that point. I mean, you have to rewind the clock back to 2002. And effectively, there was a certain amount of disregard that most of the media that was there basically paid to what people really liked. So it was kind of its own little, anachronism. This world of journalism didn't really speak to what it was that people really liked, or if it did, it spoke with a great degree of disdain for those things that we all did like. So if you weren't a part of that very narrow niche, you weren't good enough. You weren't a great enough part of what effectively everything was that they were considering to be entertainment at that moment. Your vote, your voice didn't matter. So when we set out to do this, when we created Mixdown and all the different editors and different department heads, music, movies, and games and television, all the crazy crap we've done all these many years, it was entirely intentionally meant to be, we're trying to look at everything. We're trying to look dispassionately at all the different things that make up a particular medium. And let's just say music for the moment, for the sake of simplicity. So many different genres and so many different things that it could be. Our objective was always, well, we should be looking at all of it, and we should be trying to ask ourselves, amidst all of the things that are out there, what is it that is actually what is good right now? What are the things that resonate for people who like those things? Someone who likes singer-songwriter music isn't going to like the same kind of thing that, say, someone who likes heavy metal does. And someone who might like, say, Aphex Twin and experimental electronic music gets something very different from music than, say, a Pop 40 fan that's looking to go to a club and dance might, or a hip-hop fan versus a punk rock fan. There is not to say that there isn't tons of cross-pollination in these genres, and there always has been. But our objective was to try to focus on all the different things that this could be, to try to attack and basically deal with all of those different things and try to look at what is the truest sense of what now is for everyone, for everything, but also to approach a subject matter with a certain degree of respect for you as the reader, as the fan, as the user, as the listener, as the movie fan, the TV fan, the game fan, the player, the person experiencing the media. I think that there's always been this notion that you don't know what you like, that you don't know what's good for you, that you are somehow needing to be led like a sheep to the various things that you might be interested in. And really, there's this kind of concept that, people are treated as if they're preternaturally stupid. And I always tell anybody that we've worked with, anybody who's about building a team or trying to pick content, that our assumption is that people aren't preternaturally stupid, that it isn't a problem of people not knowing what they like or what's good. They have a pretty great sense of what they like. And most people are much more diverse and open-minded about what they experience, what they engage with, than I think anybody really wants to give them credit for, or that society or pop culture or media would have you believe. And the problem is, more so, there's just so freaking much. There's just so much stuff out there that effectively it's overwhelming. There's too much to take in. And then, of course, this is part and parcel of why we kind of called ourselves Mixdown, because we were supposed to be a metaphoric extension of that process of taking all of this really crazy, complicated crap and boiling it down to a deliverable that was bite-sized, achievable, digestible, understandable. Our objective from the start was always to look at this thing and try to say, how can we put you in that moment? How can we basically help you know what you need to know and what's involved? And effectively, how can we help you understand what it is that's critical as far as what you're going to get from that? If you were to listen to that album, if you were going to watch that movie, if you were going to play that game, if you were going to watch that TV show or go to that concert, that was really the objective from the beginning, to basically say, if you don't walk away from what we do and you don't feel like you understand what you'd experience from it, we've failed. We think that you're incredibly smart. We think that you're brilliant. We think that you're open-minded. And we think you maybe just need help understanding, amidst all this noise, amidst all this chaos, what is it that we really, really need to experience? What is it that we effectively really need to pay attention to? What are the things that matter, and how should you be able to understand where might your time and attention be best spent? We're not here to tell you what to think or what to buy or what to listen, but we are trying in our own small way to help you understand what's significant so that you can best make your own decisions about how you spend your time and money. Because in this country, that is effectively how you cast your vote. Where you put your time and your attention and your money, where you put your focus as a consumer, that's how you say what you want the world to be. So our goal, if we are doing our job right ever in any station, is to try to help with any person, try to have them understand and be armed with that information so that they can best make those decisions for themselves. It is my pleasure to be a part of any effort to do that, as many years as it's taken, as fruitless as a pursuit as it can be, or as least as more difficult than it should be, to try to share good art and entertainment with people. It is the joy of my life to be a part of all of this and to do this now, to be able to speak to you now, to have you listening to my voice and watching me talk about this stuff, however it is you engage with this. It is the joy of my life to be a part of it. So thank you for going with us on this crazy journey. And I hope that in 2023, as we get into the new year, hopefully this year can be a little less difficult than the last 3 years we've all gone through. Hopefully this could be, I don't even know what normal is anymore, but something a little bit more akin to what we've always been used to, and maybe not just the nonstop rollicking, barrel roll of crisis that we've all had to deal with. Hopefully as we continue into the new year, we can continue surfacing fun, exciting, interesting things about music and movies and games and television, stories, things that you need to know. And then hopefully, by some extension, the more and more comfortable I become with this medium, interviews with people who are the creators, the people that make this special, and maybe even also the people from within Mixdown, the various minds and personalities that help make so much of this a reality. I want to thank you again for joining me, and this will be our last broadcast until early January 2023. Thank you for joining me for all these episodes. If you don't already, follow us on YouTube, subscribe to us on Twitch, follow us on all of our socials. You can find us anywhere at MXDWN on YouTube. We're Mixdown Video. Thank you so much for joining us. We'll see you in 2023. So glad to see you well. Thanks.